All right, so next up we have Jenniemarie Cisneros, and a little bit about Jenniemarie. I'm saying your name right?
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm impressed. Okay. Last name and everything.
So she is a native of South Phoenix, raised by a single dad, and right now Jenniemarie is the ministry outreach coordinator for women at Central Christian Church, where she gives voice to the marginalized. In fact, you do that throughout everything that you do in your life. And one of the focuses is racial injustice. And she recently, or not so recently, but you moved your family to a low-income community to be able to be right there in the thick of it and make a difference in people's lives. So I'm excited that Jenniemarie is here to talk to you today, and please take it away.
Yay. Hi. So it was fun listening to Athena, and there's going to be some overlap just kind of in the content that we shared, a little bit different perspective, but that's always exciting as a speaker when you know you're kind of on track with what you're going to be speaking about, because it's a relevant topic. And so I'm just excited to be here tonight. I am going to just present to you a perspective just on the impact on serving underreached communities, just kind of from my own personal experiences. And so I'm just going to start by sharing a little bit about my story and then kind of go from there. So I was, or like you said, I'm a native here. I was born and raised here, grew up in South Phoenix. I'm second generation American here. My mom was 14 when she became pregnant with me, married my dad, and then 15 when she gave birth. So right from the get-go, I was already a statistic. And then this kind of statistics just kind of piled up in my life, like, bullet point after bullet point of statistics as my life went on. When I was 5, my parents separated, and we technically lived with my mom, which really meant we lived like in the projects and the outskirts in just like really disgusting and unlivable conditions. My mom's an addict, and she's very verbally, physically, and emotionally abusive. Not only her, but she allowed others to abuse us as well. I'm the oldest of 5 kids. And so that was just kind of our life growing up there. That's just what it was. I am the child that Athena just talked about, who would come to school and their only meal would be at school. I knew hunger very well. In fact, I vividly remember as a 6-year-old walking into a grocery store, stealing a loaf of bread and eggs to feed my family at home because there was nothing to eat. Like, I knew that kind of hunger, and that was kind of it. I didn't have at that time an opinion about money. I didn't understand that we were living in poverty because that was just my life. Just like she said, I didn't know any different. That was just how life was. And so I really didn't have an opinion what money was or I understood that you needed it to buy things, but I didn't understand that it was because of the lack of this, that we were in that situation. My mom ended up leaving for good when I was 7 years old, and we were taken to my dad's house. We were left on his doorstep with just the clothes on our back. And so that's really where my relationship with money kind of started there. He lived with his sister and his dad, my aunt, my grandfather. And so he had to just very quickly from scratch, all of a sudden he had 5 kids on his doorstep with just the clothes on the back. So he had to get everything. Like, if you could just imagine just starting over with just what you have now. Clothes for 5 kids, 2 of us were in school at that time. And so school supplies, all that jazz. My youngest brother was a year old, still in bottles, still in diapers. So all of that stuff, bedding, hygiene, all of those kinds of things. And so my memories of money were formed from my dad talking about it. There was always this lack or not enough, because in actuality, living with my dad felt like luxury compared to where we were living. He had a really good job. He worked for an engineering company, and he did so for 25 years. So his relationship with the money was great, like 401k, all that jazz. Like, nothing was bought on credit, like those kinds of things, not until later. But those things weren't taught to us. It just was always this sort of lack. We just didn't have enough, and the way he talked about money. And so that was just kind of life, like growing up. And then throughout my life, just these other stereotypes that happened. So like teenage mom, I was born teenage mom, lived in poverty. My parents eventually divorced. Through that, my dad, and then I was raised by a single parent. My dad also was an alcoholic. So you can add that to the list. I ran away from home. I eventually dropped out of high school my senior year, and I was also homeless after that for quite some time, couch surfing, bouncing around from place to place. And so all of those things just kind of started to impact the way I viewed money. I'm a very high capacity learner, high capacity worker. Like, I am determined. I'm like I will get down on like nitty gritty. So it wasn't for lack of that. And I think a lot of times when we talk about personal finance, we talk about not wanting it enough or pick yourself up by the bootstraps, like Athena referred to. That just wasn't the case for me. Life kind of outweighed those things. Life got so hard at home. I was a straight 8 student at honors AP classes on the road to, I had scholarships to college, all of that stuff, but life just kind of outweighed all of those things. And I just had decisions to make. I couldn't take it anymore. As the oldest, I was responsible for just cleaning and laundry and cooking. I had to help my brothers and sisters with their homework before I could do the things I did. I did not have that childhood. And my aunt died from a 2-year battle with pancreatic cancer, which spiraled my dad's alcoholism. And I left. And so I had to deal with kind of those situations. And a lot of times when we're working in these communities, we have to realize what they are up against. It's not because of lack of will or a lack of desire. It's life circumstances sometimes outweigh what they are trying to do. And a lot of times when we come in, and Athena addressed it so well, like we have to understand their language and what they're going through. And a lot of things when we're trying to reach these communities, education is key. And not just for those in the community who don't have the financial literacy to do it. It's for us as well. We need to educate ourselves on systematic and generational poverty, understand what that is and how that affects people. We have to, like, the finance community is so smart in knowing finances and how systems and tools and all these tips and tricks and all these things. You need to get equally as wise about the community that you're serving. Read books that have nothing to do with finances. Trevor Noah's Born a Crime is excellent in the way he breaks down just systematic and generational poverty. I haven't heard anyone articulate it any better. Just Mercy by Brian Stevenson, I think is his name, talks about the prison systems and what that does for the poverty level and those kinds of things and just the systematic way that prison systems is set up for the lower income communities that we're trying to acknowledge. The Hate You Give by Angie Thomas is probably one of my most, I love it. It's a young adult novel. It has nothing to do with finance, nothing to do with education, but it tells a story. And it's a story relevant to not just youth, but grown-up stays. The tension that my husband and I have lived in when we figured out that we finally made it, we were in a place where we were content in our income, we were able to pay all our bills and tithe and give and invest and save and all these things. And then we realized there was this whole community that we were once a part of that wasn't being served. And so we purposely moved our family there. Our kids went to, ironically, we moved into the only area of Mesa where the elementary and the junior high were the only F-rated schools in that district, and our children went there and people lost their lids. They could not understand why we would move into those communities. And they didn't lose their lids because they didn't understand. They full well understand what was happening in those communities and the poverty of the communities, and yet they were doing nothing to improve those communities. Their solution was to move out. And so we need to be able to invest in those communities. And as bloggers and financiers, the education is key, but also we need to know our community. We need to know the community that you're serving, and we need to be very wise with that. I worked for a nonprofit also for 5 years with At-Risk Youth, and when volunteers would come in, they were like, nope, not having it, because they knew they were either there for a photo op or to write some sort of article on them or just to pat themselves on the back for whatever amount of time, and they did not trust them. And they will spot you a mile away, and it's legit, they're not gonna go there with you. And it's the same for these communities, because you have to earn their trust, and the only way you can do that is by going in there. And so I would suggest picking a lane. It's great, know your stuff, know your finance stuff, and if you want to invest back into the community, pick a lane. Are you focusing on homeless kids? Are you focusing on just these first generation? We have a whole first generation of kids coming up who are going to be going into college or going into the workforce where they have nobody to help them with resumes or these kinds of things. So I would say pick your lane and do your research and just be knowledgeable about that, and then invest the time in knowing that community. Invest the time to get to know them before you even pull out a finance tool or anything like that. Learn about who they are, what their needs are, because it's going to be different from person to person. My sister is a single mom to 4 daughters, and she's very prideful in being able to provide for them. And my nieces see that and they pick that up. And so they're provided opportunities at school to go on these field trips out of state or to compete in competitions, but they all cost money. And my nieces will not ask her for the money because they know she doesn't have it, and they do not want to make her feel bad for not being able to provide for them. And so that's like this barrier that they put in to protect her, but then it causes them to not be able to take advantage of that. So you have to know that that these things are happening. It's not because they're not taking advantage of the opportunities that are there, but it's the why behind the what. Does that make sense to you? And so these are the kinds of things that we have to wrestle with and think about. If you truly want to make a difference in your community, then you have to get into the community and learn who the community is and how you're serving them. And I would just say that you need to be able to take risk. Like, you're going to want to think outside the box, because trust me, if you're trying to tell a family living in poverty to give up Starbucks or to budget plan or any of these, that's the most absolute ridiculous thing in the world. Because first of all, they're not going out to eat. They're not freaking buying Starbucks. Sorry, they can budget plan better than any person in this room, because they already have that mindset of having to stretch this dollar. Their grocery budget in the first place is very minimal. They have to make decisions. Am I going to pay for my medication, or am I going to pay for groceries? And so they are very well aware of how to make a dollar stretch. They could probably teach you a lesson or two, to be honest. And if you go in there and you have to figure out then what is causing this, and it may be different between them. It may be that they just need help with the resumes, or finding a different income source, or these kinds. It could be a variety of different ways, but that's our job to get in and to figure that out. And I would second just what Athena said, like, no one wants to be spoken down to. No one wants to be judged. The fact of the matter is, they are there where they're there, and there's nothing that any of us can do to change that. We can't go back and say, well, why didn't you do this or that? We all make mistakes. And sometimes it's not caused by our mistakes. It's just circumstantial. And so we have to go from, okay, here's where we're at. Where do you want to go, and how can I help you get there? I wouldn't come in. We were very naive when we moved into the community, and I really came in like, oh, I'm here, I'm going to make a difference, I am going to help you get better. And they were like, listen, lady, we do not need you to help us get better. Like, I am great, I am fantastic where I am. And that was like very humbling for me. And we had to learn how to come in and just figure it out. Like, I think big and I want to do these big old things. And really, it's the small little steps that eventually will get you there. And so for us, it's just like acknowledging when we go to my son's game, whose parents aren't there? And so whose kids can we take pictures of so they feel welcome and known? How can we support them? Can we invite that kid out to dinner and just get to know him a little bit better? Like, why aren't his parents there? It's not because they don't love and care for them. It's because they're working a second or a third job. Well, it's to provide for him to do that. And so it's just those little bit of acknowledgement. And so I'm really excited for that, and to be able to just speak on this topic. I can get really excited and go on and on. A lot of things, I'm trying not to put like on my preacher voice and just like, it's like really hard not to like give a message, because that's my background and that's where I come from, just my faith, and I do get really excited about that. But I just feel like we really, really need to invest in the community. I love what you guys are doing with this organization and getting back there, because it humanizes people. We live in a very high homeless population, and we walk our neighborhood all the time. And so we walk and we know the homeless people by name. Like, our children are taught to look them in the eye and say hello. And that's where it starts with, just humanizing people. And you would be amazed how much better your work could be done as finance experts and bloggers and stuff when it just starts with a simple hello. Hi, how are you? Can you tell me your story? And not come in with being the know-all, end-all, because you can learn a lot more from them. And so that's all I have for